Hello, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Build Back with Trust webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. You have arrived. Today is going to be a fantastic session as we have partnered with the Better Business Bureau. So we're going to be together for 1 hour today, and let's jump into it. So my name is Danielle Hofer. I am the Training and Outreach Officer at Women's Enterprise Center. I'm joining you from my home office in Kelowna. And part of my role is to deliver training resources and connect with organizations across the province. So if you are representing an organization in your city or town, I really encourage you to get in touch with me as we can share lots of resources to better serve women entrepreneurs. Also, if you have any training requests, if there's something that you're wanting to learn, to help you better perform in your business, we are always developing new content, so please let us know. So webinars 101, I'm sure lots of you have been using Zoom these days, but if you have not, here is a quick 101. So we have both the Q&A function and the chat function. The Q&A is very best for if you want a specific question answered. That way we will not lose track of it. Whereas the chat is more about that communication, chatting with other women business owners on the line. But if you do put your questions in the chat, there is a possibility that we might lose it in all the interaction there. So really encourage you to use that question and answer. And Carla has assured me that we'll have lots of time for those questions to be answered throughout the session, so make sure you keep those coming. So a little bit about Women's Enterprise Center. We are a not-for-profit organization, and we are devoted to helping BC women start, lead, and grow their own businesses. Our full range of services include a business loan program of up to $150,000, with access to an additional $100,000 through a partnership with BDC. We also provide business advice, skills training such as webinars like this. We have mentoring programs, resources, and we also offer a supportive community to help women business owners realize their business potential. And we coordinate all of this through our 3 main offices. So our head office is in Kelowna, and then we have an office in Victoria as well as in Vancouver. But these days, everything is online. So please don't drive to one of our locations as we're just seeing clients virtually. And so that is a little bit about Women's Enterprise Center. We will follow up with some extra resources about our organization and how we support women business owners in the province. And we are in COVID season, so we have identified a couple different opportunities to learn and grow throughout the pandemic. We have a dedicated resource page to help you get through these trying times. We have specific business advice, so you can connect with a business advisor. We also have the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund, which is a loan program that has a grant portion. So if your business was existing prior to the pandemic and has been negatively impacted, you can access these additional resources. So now on to today's session. So trust goes beyond posting signs about hand washing, although that's important too. Every interaction is an opportunity to build relationships and nurture trust, and your brand must work to earn it. It's true that you may not have done anything to lose your customers' trust, but as the province reopens, consumers as a whole are cautious. They are physically safe. Are they physically safe? Will products ship on time? And can they get the supplies they need? Will the services get interrupted, and what activities get canceled? In today's session, we will share tips and insights you can use to help customers feel confident about doing business with you. some of the things that Carla will cover is the trust barometer and how it sways consumer behavior, customer trust before and during COVID-19, the Better Business Bureau's 8 standards for trust, and lastly, practical ways to rebuild trust in your everyday customer interactions. And now I would like to introduce our panelists today. Carla Liard, she is the Manager, Community and Public Relations at the Better Business Bureau, and she serves mainland BC. Born on the beautiful island of Jamaica, Carla is the Manager of the Community Public Relations at the Better Business Bureau. She is also an attorney at law under the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court of Jamaica. Carla integrated her background in law with her passion for public relations, building a career as a corporate communications strategist and community liaison. An advocate in every sense of the word, Carla also volunteers with the Jamaican Canadian Cultural Association of BC, serving as their president, while she actively supports the Jamaican immigrant community in the province. Carla holds a Bachelor's of Law degree with honors, as well as a graduate diploma with her distinction in public relations from the University of the West Indies. She is currently pursuing her master's in intercultural and international relations at Royal Roads University. So we are absolutely in good company. Thank you so much, Carla, for being here today, and I will turn over the floor to you.
Thank you. All right, let's see if we can get it going.
Looks great.
All right, awesome. So thank you for that introduction, Danielle, and good morning to everyone who has joined us today. As you can see, the title of today's webinar is Build Back with Trust, and the aim of our session is to learn how we can make trust the foundation of our business relationships, especially with consumers. Yeah, so Danielle previously alluded to what we'll be going through. So, as you can see, we're going to be talking about understanding trust in business. We're going to take a look at the Edelman Trust Barometer. We're going to look at COVID-19, its impact on business and how that impacted consumer trust. And then we'll dive into the factors that erode consumer trust, the new consumer that is emerging, and factors that will help you gain and maintain consumer trust. Now, to kick things off, I'm hoping we'll have some interaction going, and I want to start by taking a few seconds to understand the people that you serve. So what are some of the things, as a business owner or for someone who works in a business that are important to your consumers? For this question, you can drop your responses in the chat, and I think Daniel will help me to kind of share what the responses are that are coming in. So anything is important to your consumers based on the industry that you work in and the people that you serve. Right, I see good customer service as the first thing coming in. Health, safety, and trust. Anything else? What else is important to the consumers that you serve in your industry? Let me know what you see, Danielle.
Yeah, I work in the engineering field. The client wants us to be available, safe, and knowledgeable.
Right.
I work in private homes with individuals, so trust is key.
Absolutely.
Keeping operations running. Also consistency in hours of operation.
Right. Yep. Thanks, guys. Yeah, so all these things that we're talking about are pretty much applicable across most, if not all, industries, right? When we think about the industries that we're in, whether it's a service industry or it's just us providing products, and more importantly, all of these things that we just mentioned, or at least just alluded to, because that's just the tip of the iceberg, they form the part of the basis on which you establish and maintain trust. And some of you actually mentioned trust in your responses. So let's dig a little deeper into trust. Right, so what is trust? Trust is a bilateral relationship. So, one trusts and the other is trusted. And so while the two are related, they're not actually the same thing. Now, often when we tend to think about the word trust, we have more than one meaning ascribed to it. So we use it to describe what we think of what people say. We use it to describe behaviors. We use it to describe whether or not we feel comfortable sharing certain information with someone else. And we use the same word to indicate whether or not we feel someone has our own interests at heart versus their own. Now, as a business owner, trust is the most important business and brand asset you manage, especially in relationships with customers, clients, employees, and stakeholders. Trust is the natural result of thousands of tiny actions, words, thoughts, and intentions. Now, I've had several conversations with business owners like yourselves, and they use terms like elusive and mysterious to describe trust. And it's largely because no one can tell you exactly where it originates or how it develops. So it's clear that the trust process varies, and it is largely very subjective. However, what we are certain about is the fact that trust is developed over time. So you can't go through the motions or pay lip service. It actually takes consistent work and demonstrated relationship management. Now, while relationships between businesses and consumers are different from your interpersonal connections that you have with, people in your circle, most of the core foundations are actually quite similar. And I'm hoping to explore some of these with you guys today. Now, what does trust mean for business and consumer interactions? Customers are a business's biggest asset. Without them, no one could thrive and no business would succeed in their endeavors. And I'd even dare to say that there would be no purpose for business at all. But while it's hard to quantify exactly how important trust is for a business, we know that for business owners, a lack of trust is your biggest expense. Without trust, you can actually hemorrhage funds just trying to garner it. Your transactions can't occur. Influence is destroyed. Leaders lose their teams, and salespersons end up losing sales. As the sole driver behind revenue, what your customers think about you can affect everything from your perception in the industry to your ability to convert leads. So trust and relationships, actually, and I would even say much more than money, are the currency of business. One can even argue that the sole purpose of marketing and communications is to earn and nurture trust. But our economy works because people trust each other and the businesses that they support. So when you consider the importance of trust in leadership and even in business ethics, you understand why trust is important to consumers. If we even look at the world that we're in today, consumers exist in a global 24/7 situation that maximizes the offer of competition. So for a consumer, it can be a confusing place, to try to determine the credibility of a product or a service. Today's consumers are being bombarded with endless options. There was a point where it was just 2 brands and a few businesses, and now they have a global mix of hundreds. And so consumers are now asking who they know and who they trust before making a purchasing decision. So the need to build trust and brand trust especially has been heightened thanks to the immediate effects of social media on our lives and the spending choices and the habits that it's now creating. It's become a far more important currency for brands in the face of mobile devices and social media and social influence. So businesses and brands must now build and maintain trust, particularly because the consumer is more skeptical, they're also more empowered, and they're not afraid to push back and ask questions. So consumer trust is not only vital in an environment where customer expectations are increasing daily and where competition is fierce, it is also a differentiator that could make or break your business. Now, looking at it from the consumer's end, trusting a brand means you associate with their product and their service. So the brand and the business becomes a part of their identity. And in some instances, depending on what your product or your service is, it might even mean for a consumer that they have membership to a particular socioeconomic group. So as we dig a little deeper, you're going to see where factors like price and benefits are growing less and less significant. So before we get into that, why is trust so important? One of the most important aspects of the consumer experience is trust. Trust is important because customers simply don't want to do business with a company that they can't believe in, that they can't, shut their eye and make a purchase with and, just ultimately trust them. In fact, over 1/3 of consumers rank trust in a brand or a business as one of the top 3 factors that influence purchase decisions. In a recent PwC consumer survey, 37% of respondents shared about the importance of merchandise being in stock. 35% quoted the value of trust, and 31% placed emphasis on where the business was located. And as you can see, price is not on the list. So with all this in mind, if you do earn a sale from one of these consumers, you have even more opportunities to earn their long-term trust and turn them into a loyal returning customer. So trust leads to customer retention, and we all know how extremely valuable and profitable that is. In fact, returning customers spend nearly 3 times as much as a one-time customer, and they're likely to become advocates who can even bring you more customers in the end. But in order to grow a base of returning shoppers, you have to convince the new shoppers to trust you enough to make the sale in the first place. So let's look at the trust barometer. So for those who don't know, the Edelman Trust Barometer is the most comprehensive study of trust in the world. For the past 20 years, Edelman has examined trust in business, government, media, and NGOs. And each year they kind of gauge the levels of trust in these institutions and assess the drivers and detractors of trust for each of them. So they explain that trust is essential for future success. So let's look at what they had to say about what trust was like prior to the pandemic. When we look back at consumer trust levels during this time, we see where trust was on the decline in 2017. The Edelman report for that year shared that part of the distrust in business was attributed to consumers feeling that businesses were overcharging for products that they needed to live. They also felt that they were not seeing tangible results for their loyalty. Some of these things they thought businesses weren't doing were things like protecting the environment, investing in their communities, and partnering with others to address societal issues. Now, if we look at trust levels in 2019 and into the start of 2020, we see that trust was still declining. And if you're seeing the stats for Canada, we see where Canada lost 3 marks in the trust rating. And the reasons for the growing distrust at that time actually was the same as before. Now, if we look at some of the takeaways from the Edelman report for 2019 going into 2020, we see that trusted companies have greater license to operate. So this speaks to the acceptance granted to a business by the general community. So you're looking at other businesses, customers, regulators, even the media. The next thing that came out was that trusted companies have better relationships with consumers. So 3/4 of the people they surveyed said that they would actively recommend a business that they trust. So they said they were willing to pay a premium. They wanted to try the latest innovations first that were coming from that business. And they would likely stick with the business even if a competitor for some reason had better reviews or was more innovative or even was more greener. So customers who trust you and are more likely to engage with you will ultimately buy from you, advocate for you, and defend you in their circles. The third thing that we saw was that trusted firms have trusted employee relationships, and a lot of people don't make the distinction of how important this is. Their survey found that 7 in 10 people were proud to work for companies that they trust, compared to half who are actually embarrassed to work for people that they distrust. So trusted companies are more likely to have employees that recommend them as a great place to work and advocate for them in their interactions with their social circles, as well as with other consumers. Another thing that came out was that trusted companies are more likely to receive institutional investment and investor opportunities. The survey found that investors said that their trust in a company is the single most important factor when considering investment decisions. And they actually placed that above 17 other factors like financial evaluation and even an engaged board of directors. And the final proof is the fact that trusted companies are more resilient in the face of a crisis or risk. Consumers and employees are more likely to remain loyal and continue supporting brands and businesses that they trust, even in times of difficulty. So if we put all of these together, you can see that there are significant benefits to being a trusted company and ensuring you have that strong consumer reputation. Now, following up on that last point about resilience in the face of crisis, let's look at how your businesses were impacted because of the pandemic. So my question to you guys would be, what were the biggest challenges your business or your company faced because of COVID-19? And you can always, as usual, just drop your responses in the chat. And if you're not a business owner, but you work for a company, you can share what some of the experiences were like for the organization that you're a part of or that you work for. Let me know what you're seeing, Danielle.
Yeah, so I'm seeing no customers. We used to prepare a lunch for schools. Okay.
Yeah.
Lack of new clients, no one willing to leave home.
Right.
I had to close the business for 3.5 months. Another person said,
there are likely some businesses that are still closed. Yeah.
Yeah. Travel restrictions, we could not go on site anymore.
Right.
Mine sites in the north. Had to cease operation as modes of transmission unknown.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Sarah says too much work.
Too much work. Yeah.
Too much. Yeah. I worked in a boutique on a tourist-based island and lost a lot of customers as a result.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
Lost main contract income. And then this last one, services were shut down and then had to find a new facility and clients are not responding / returning.
Right. Yes. Thank you guys so much for sharing. And you know, that's really does sound a lot like what a lot of the business owners I have been speaking with have had to say about their own experiences. You know, just to kind of dive a little into that, in late May, actually, BBB asked our accredited business owners what they found to be the biggest challenges that their own businesses were facing. And your responses actually match up to what many of the businesses in the survey that we completed had to say. So if we look a little closer, we see where cash flow was at the top. And we saw where keeping up with customer demand and paying employees was also another among the top factors that they had to deal with. And we surveyed more than 1,300 accredited businesses, and 70% believe that the coronavirus outbreak had a significant negative impact. And at that time, the only businesses, or at least the industries that seemed to be doing very well or reported any form of positive growth at all during that time were the construction, remodeling, and building trades. So, you know, while there was some positivity for the majority of industries and businesses out there, it was a nightmare. Now, if we look at this slide, we see where financial uncertainty was one of the biggest drivers of the perceived negative impact among businesses. More than half of the business owners surveyed said they did not have enough cash or credit to last them past 60 days should another unexpected crisis arise. And for a business owner, that is absolutely devastating. So small and newer businesses were at high risk of folding, especially among the companies with 10 or less employees and those businesses that were in operation for less than 6 years. And for most of the descriptions that you're hearing, that's small businesses and businesses just like yours. Now, the whole situation with the pandemic led many companies towards changing the way they do business. So some eliminated expenditures where possible. Some were started leveraging technology a lot more. And for the first time, many started adopting work from home systems for their employees. The work from home system was something that my company, BBB, actually had to activate. And it's still in effect today, because as you can see, I am working from home. So while 36% of businesses say that they have or will likely reduce their staffing, 30% of business owners told BBB that they had to change or adapt to a new business model. So that brings me again to my next question. So for business owners, did you pivot, or change your business model due to COVID-19? So for those of you who may not be business owners, you can indicate yes or no to whether there are any changes implemented within your company. So for instance, like work from home policies, reduced work days, work hours, things like that. So you should see a poll popping up quickly and you can respond. And then you can let me know what the responses are like, Daniel.
Yep, they're just coming in. We'll give 10 more seconds to put those answers in, as I can see them coming up. All right, last chance. All right, and I'm gonna end the poll here.
Yeah. And I'm seeing in the chat where a couple said that when most people here 75% I'm seeing had to pivot or change their business model due to COVID-19. And in the chat, I'm seeing where they did temporary layoffs, they reduced hours, some started working from home, some were open fewer days per week, or it came down to where they had a skeleton crew with just the owner being in the business operating on a daily basis. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. Now, in our more recent survey, the perception of negative impact actually dropped slightly from 70% to 62%. Cash flow, it's still the #1 business challenge, followed by health and safety at 37%. But not surprising, we see where consumer trust is now on that list at 23%. And it's clear, it's been hard getting consumers to go back to pre-COVID shopping habits. Discretionary spending has been reduced. People don't know what's going to happen, so they're holding back and reserving their funds. Vulnerable people are scared, and many still are. I actually still personally assist an elderly couple with their grocery and pharmacy runs because they just don't want to risk exposure. However, you know, when we did also complete the survey, we found that there were 52% of businesses that said they started seeing opportunities to attract new customers. Then 46% saw an opening to create customer loyalty, and another 25% actually saw where their businesses can now find new ways and avenues to support the community. In this next slide, I wanted to kind of, you know, take the focus a little off what we're looking at in terms of stats and share the story of one of our BBB accredited businesses in the United States and how they were able to ride the storm of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Coming into the year 2020, we were poised to have our best year ever. No one quite knew what to expect. When the lockdown happened, we had to invent an entire new way to do business without being able to be in our stores. Everyone's worlds got turned upside down. I sent a message to our team. I said, hey, we can choose to spread panic and fear, or we can become examples and spread hope. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us to do that. We're Amish Yard. We're a BBB accredited business. Locally, we sell Amish-built storage sheds and garages and horse barns and cabins. The Amish will come right to your yard and put them together and build them on site. In addition to that, nationally, we sell outdoor Amish-made polyvinyl furniture, and we'll ship that all over the United States. I started the business in late 2007 in the midst of a recession. One of the things that carried us through that was quality and integrity. And here we are in another crisis, and I think what we've learned is quality and integrity will never lose their value. One of the very first companies that we became associated with are Weaver Barnes. Within about 3 years, our sales with Weaver Barnes went from about $40,000 to over $1 million. Transparency is very important throughout our whole organization. In fact, last night I was messaging back and forth with clients, just asking for shipping updates, and it surprises people when the owner of the company is just messaging back and forth with them. And I like to keep that transparent and keep it real with them and say, hey, we're struggling logistically right now, but we're here for you. And people appreciate that. The BBB throughout the years, they have a long history of just taking care of people. That's a really good fit with Amish Yard because it adds an entire layer of trust to our company. And I think that's important now more than ever. People know when you care or when you don't care, and people respond to that. And when this all happened, we took hundreds of orders at the home show, and we've had no cancellations, you know, and people have been understanding. They can't wait to get their stuff. If you own a small business and you're struggling right now, I think of a quote by John Maxwell. He says, when there's hope in the future, there's power in the present. I really believe that if you're going through something and you learn through it, you will come out of it stronger.
Yeah, so I really liked his story because despite of the situation with the pandemic and how it impacted his business, he tried to look at things from a positive perspective. He tapped into the things that we we know keep our business afloat and attract consumers in the first place. And that for him was his way to navigate the storm and ultimately, you know, still bounce back from the pandemic. So, you know, while the business community has taken a significant hit, and with that, you know, consumer trust has fallen, the pandemic has also created an unprecedented opportunity to mend the fragment in business consumer interactions. A significant part of that process will require understanding the factors that erode consumer trust. So let's look a little into that. As a starting point, I wanted to share the top consumer issues that are reported to our BBB. First one, non-delivery of products, which is pretty self-explanatory. Difficulty getting a refund. Consumers are not aware of refund policies, or they feel they can't get their money back if they want to withdraw from the transaction. No contact from the business. And this one is particularly interesting or concerning because of the fact that, you know, aside from them not receiving updates on their orders and transactions, they have further distrust when they can't get through to you when they're trying to reach out. So there are cases that have come to BBB where owners decided to close permanently because of the economic situation, but they didn't advise consumers that they know they have pending transactions with. So, you know, it could be a case where the owner is now operating from home in order to save costs. And when the consumer turns up to the place where they know the business address should be and see it closed, they think they've been duped. And so that even sows deeper seeds of distrust. And of course, unfinished jobs due to exaggerated promises, you know, trying to get more customers to stay afloat, but at the same time risking the quality of your service. Other factors that jumped out were misleading ads. So things like 100% warranties when you know there are limitations, saying your product or service is guaranteed to kill COVID-19 virus when you know that there are other factors or limitations that the consumer should be aware of. And, you know, with automation, that was another interesting one that popped up because of the fact that, yes, you know, we're trying to become more operationally efficient and we're trying to find ways to streamline processes, but it could have the opposite impact when it comes to quality customer experience. So, you know, by trying to get through as many customers as you can, and you're trying to increase the volume, especially now, you know, you end up sacrificing in some instances personalized customer support. So instead of feeling like an actual human, you know, you have a company that you can trust to solve your problems and meet your needs, the customer ends up feeling like a number being pushed through an assembly line of customer care. And so small businesses, you know, especially during this time, they actually have an advantage because they can directly address customer pain points and help to build trusting relationships. And the other one that came up was price gouging. So for those who don't know, price gouging refers to when sellers increase the price of goods, services, and commodities to a level that's much higher than is considered reasonable or fair. Locally, we've seen so many cases where instances like toilet paper, you know, being sold for $10 and $20 per roll, and there are even worse cases. If we look at March to June, the Consumer Protection BC actually received over 2,000 price gouging reports about local businesses. And here at BBB, we received price gouging reports with top industries being online retailers, grocery stores, the new car dealers, and surprisingly, plumbers. Now, I'm sure this one won't surprise you, but scams. Scams are another major factor that erode consumer trust. Between March to May, consumers across our province lost thousands to fraudsters. And as you can see, I personally believe COVID-19 created the perfect storm for scammers. If you look at the scams listed here, 5 of the top 6 scams for that time period were directly connected to business transactions. So advanced fee loans, employment scams, puppy scams, you know, all of these things are business related. Scammers impersonated and they actually decided to ride off the credibility of reputable, recognized, and trusted businesses. They also created fake retail websites online and fly-by-night business operations. At BBB, we've seen several instances where scammers pretend to be legitimate companies and they try to trick consumers. They set up fake websites and in some instances actually hijack your company name and address. They may use branding hijacking, which is pretty much copying and misusing your logos and your website content. And they impersonate your business and deceive unsuspecting consumers. So while your business does not necessarily lose money, you know, in the case of like a cyber attack, your reputation is tarnished when angry customers who were ripped off by scammers think your company is responsible. Since that time though, we have seen some more scams popping up that target consumers and create even more distrust and uncertainty for businesses to deal with. We're seeing fly-by-night movers. So we did an investigative study which showed an average of 13,000 complaints and negative reviews about movers. Consumers who are desperate to move in the pandemic stumbled into scammers who pitched a good deal, but in many instances, they either drove away with their belongings, they held their items hostage for additional undisclosed fees, they left them with damaged items, or told the consumers at the last minute that they were going to be charged several times the amount that they were quoted. If we look at this slide, around the end of August, we noticed another sophisticated emerging scam where the scammers were targeting online shoppers, online retailers, and actually shipping companies. So the scammers tricked online shoppers into paying for goods on fake websites that impersonated legitimate local business sites. Naturally, the items don't arrive. And when the scammers actually took it a step further by preventing the consumers from securing refunds by providing fraudulent shipping information to PayPal. So they're telling PayPal that, hey, we sent the product, it says item received here. And so PayPal, believing in this, so in this case, they were also victims, ended up holding back refunds from consumers. But that situation has now been rectified. But this goes to show you how sophisticated the scams can become. Now, with vehicle shipper and escrow scams, consumers were on platforms like Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, Auto Trader, and they were actually looking for low-priced vehicles. And at this time, especially because of the pandemic, people are trying to reduce their public transportation experiences. And so they're actually trying to get personal vehicles at this point. So many of them stumbled into ads where sellers were eager to get rid of vehicles. And there were instances like, I'm getting divorced, or someone in my family passed away, or I'm working from home, and so I don't need a car anymore. And so the pandemic also gave the scammers a good reason for why the sellers can't meet them in person or inspect the vehicle. So what they ended up doing was telling the victims that, hey, you can give your money to an independent third party, you can send it by wire transfer, they're gonna hold the money in escrow until the car is delivered, and you'd have a chance to inspect it before you decide whether or not you want to keep it. And the victims were told that if they weren't satisfied, they could return the vehicle and they would get all of their money back. But of course, the money went straight to the scammers, as in most cases, no vehicle ever existed, and so no vehicle was ever delivered. And the third-party escrow company was fake. In fact, between January to July of this year, BBB received just 264 reports, and the losses were almost $650,000. And victims were losing an average of $5,000, but in some of the cases, the losses were much greater, especially from an individual perspective. And then finally, we'll look a little into cryptocurrency. Now, BBB received a staggering 148 million inquiries about businesses in this industry between January to August of this year alone. And this is almost a 23% increase when compared to last year. Over 900,000 consumers have also submitted complaints to BBB about negative experiences in cases where they stumbled into some fraudulent company that end up taking their money. Locally, in British Columbia, BBB received reports from people in Vancouver, Langley, Port Moody, Saanich, Mission, Victoria. And if we're looking across the country, we're seeing reports from Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Nova Scotia, even Newfoundland and Labrador. But, what was most concerning was the fact that on average, victims were losing over $1,000. And especially in this time when we already have, people cutting back on funds, if they get scarring situations like this where they stumble into a scam and lose that amount of money, they're even less likely to spend with you, right? And so individual reports are showing where people lost as much as $8,000. Now, when you take all of these negative experiences into account, you understand why consumers are so skeptical and also so distrusting. And now scammers have made it even more difficult for legitimate businesses and companies like yours to earn consumer trust. But of course, there is still more. Now, another factor that erodes consumer trust is issues while shopping online. Now, if we look at the next slide, we see where a recent survey found that 70% of consumers cancel their online purchases because of lack of trust. Now, think about back in the days when we would actively go out and shop. consumers come into your store, but their trust isn't given. They don't know you, they don't know your products. When you're shopping in a store, you can see the product before your eyes. You're not worried if it won't fit right because you can get to try it on. You don't need to wonder how big it will be, what the quality is like, because in some cases you can run your hands through it, you can touch it, and if required, you can even smell it. But in a store, you understand the product. When it comes to earning the consumer's trust online, it's more difficult because factors that influence trust, that when first-time consumers land on your site aren't the same as what will lead them to check out. So they have different points that determine whether or not they continue with the transaction. Now, consider this. 60 to 80% of e-commerce site visitors are first-time users. The average conversion rate, just 2.5%. And if we add the extra dose of challenge into the mix, it takes just 2.6 seconds for online visitors to form an opinion of your brand when they go on your website. And of course, once you've lost those visitors, the chances of getting them back are very slim. So with that in mind, recommendations are actually a big part of an online customer's trust assessment about your website and your business. Research indicates that recommendations are the most important trust factor. 92% of people trust recommendations from people they know, and 70% trust consumer opinions posted online. So your takeaway is simple. Positive reviews are crucial. So we'll look at this a little bit more closely in a couple of seconds. Now, after a customer has started to believe your brand and your business is trustworthy, they begin the risk assessment process. So here is where they're going to be looking at how secure their personal information is and how reliable it will be for them to make a purchase. And how you can start by, helping them to feel more comfortable is to protect their personal information and offer purchase security. Because whether you know it or not, consumers are genuinely concerned about their personal information being hacked or abused by others. Another way to build trust is to offer comprehensive, easy to find contact information. The last thing a customer wants is to hand over their sensitive information and their money and never see their product. So you want to lessen the risk of purchasing by including multiple options to contact you. So your live chat, if you have a physical address, drop that there too. Phone numbers and an email address. Where necessary, add your FAQs, your return policies, and if applicable, your package tracking information. And you want to put that in highly visible areas on the website. You also want to make sure that you accept well-known payment methods, so major credit cards, PayPal. And while they're in the checkout stage, you want to show off some of those positive experiences other customers have had. So you include that on that page on the website. So that will give them more encouragement to trust you enough to complete the purchase. Because I've gone as far as about to put in my credit card information or even putting it on. And then when I'm about to click hit, I go, never mind. I'm not sure how comfortable I feel. And you change your mind. So you want to be able to encourage them straight through. Now, the new consumer. As people grapple with the effects of COVID-19, they'll put their faith in their business if you keep them safe, communicate clearly, hold up your side of the bargain, make sure you have things in stock, provide consistent level of service, especially, convenient delivery times and pickup windows. Trust also implies relationship, and you can't have a relationship with consumers if you don't know them. So it's important to understand how the pandemic is changing people's behaviors and their demand for your products and services. So we did a survey with Google in April, and we found that nearly half of consumers are more selective on which businesses to trust. Consumers listed what type of business practices they favored during this pandemic, especially as their needs and demands continue to evolve. So social distancing, good hygiene, businesses being readily available, being transparent about refunds and cancellations. So yes, they know the lines are long. Yes, it means extended wait times to complete transactions, but consumers showed where they appreciate your efforts to keep them safe and will naturally begin to trust you more with their needs. Consumers are also looking for businesses and companies that support the vision of an ethical marketplace where buyers and sellers can trust each other. Now, when it comes to consumers going forward, their level of comfort in visiting public places and even traveling in the next 1 to 2 months is still relatively low when compared to pre-COVID times. So they're looking for opportunities where they can shop more mindfully, health consciously, more local, and more efficient. And as you can see, health, 75% of consumers think that the pandemic will increase the focus on this area. So businesses and brands need to take into consideration how they can incorporate and support healthy lifestyle for consumers, especially since people are going to be locked up a lot going forward for the next couple of weeks into the months. You want to make sure that you have a health strategy into your business plan for the foreseeable future. Conscious consumption. So 65% of consumers are saying the pandemic has increased the focus on the environment. So you now want to consider how to make this a key part of your business and your consumer offerings. You want to build sustainability and responsibility into your whole model. Buying local. 40% of consumers actually plan to continue buying locally sourced goods and supporting locally based businesses, especially those that are in close proximity to where they live. During the pandemic, especially during the start, we saw where neighborhood stores were able to provide where larger retailers struggled. And so this enabled consumers to support local businesses. And so because of that, they want to continue that process. So where possible, you want to emphasize the local authenticity of your company or business and do that through your marketing strategies. In fact, October 19th, which is next week, Monday, is the start of Small Business Week in Canada. How are you capitalizing on this opportunity to attract new customers and start new trusting relationships with them? And lastly, digital commerce. There's a 160% expected increase in e-commerce purchases from new or low frequency users. So with many businesses making the move to online market platforms because of the pandemic, while also anticipating lower in-store transactions since the weather is now getting colder, the demand for e-commerce has actually surged. And now many people who previously avoided these platforms are now actually starting to engage. So you may have noticed some trends where retailers were now having groceries delivered. So for consumers who are seniors, for example, they could now enjoy their groceries, even if they meant paying a little more for the delivery, and they could get it from their favorite stores. They wouldn't have to go out, they wouldn't have to risk exposure. And that's actually a great opportunity to not only serve, but you're building trust and you're reinventing your business strategy to go along with what's happening in the times. So companies and businesses will need to substantially increase investment in all forms of digital commerce to meet future demand. So while COVID-19 has been accelerating the digital adoption, there is still a third of consumers that are still struggling with technology. And the first person that comes to mind is my mom. So you want to think about developing user-friendly platforms that every category of consumer can comfortably navigate. So looking ahead, how can I rebuild with trust? Now, in a world dominated by digital marketing rather than face-to-face encounters and a steadily growing economy where there are more businesses than ever, it's going to be hard to cultivate the kind of perception that makes a difference. Trust has never been more important for companies to develop and maintain. It's more important to take the time to develop a business model that your customers can trust. And so the big question around trust is how best to create it. And the key is authenticity. You need value or principles that are going to guide the way you do things. And that's where trust can really help as a guiding principle. And honestly, this is where the BBB's 8 standards for trust come in. So the BBB's standards for trust can be a guiding light for businesses navigating through these trying times. And, before we go into them, I think Danielle wanted to probably say something.
Yeah, I just have a couple questions, and
Yeah.
I have one person asking here, what is a puppy scam? Before you're talking about the different scams.
Yeah, so the puppy scam is pretty much where the scammers create platforms, so websites online. You are searching for a puppy or a specific breed, and they have these pictures that are absolutely adorable that they've stolen from persons who genuinely own puppies or from adoption sites, placing them on this website and possibly either putting them up for sale or telling you that you can adopt these puppies. And so especially because of the pandemic, more people were at home, they've actually probably have kids, and they're saying this is a great time to now break in a pet into a new environment because they're gonna be home. They go out looking for these opportunities, see these websites, and end up engaging with scammers. So the scammer will tell them a situation that, the puppy is in Ontario and all you need to do is pay for shipping to get the puppy to you. But then the shipping cost changes over and over again, or they tell you that you need to pay for COVID-19 vaccinations that don't exist, or, they tell you that, the puppy is in New York. And for you to get it, you're going to have to pay for the crate, you're going to have to pay for the shipping, you're going to have to pay for the vaccination. but the puppy is gonna come to you. And in some cases, they've sent videos of other people's puppies to make you believe that this puppy genuinely exists. And people have lost as much as $2,500 trying to just get a puppy when they, you know, when they thought that they were actually buying something legitimate, real, and authentic.
Wow. Okay. I thought it may have been a term for something else, but legitimately a puppy scam.
Yeah. Yeah.
And before you go into this, I also wanted to bring up certain industries that have been really hard hit by the pandemic.
Yeah.
A personal experience for me is the wedding industry. And
Yes.
I had my wedding planned and had to postpone it due to the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so then it's looking back into all the contracts that were signed. And we did a previous session on force majeure and what it looks like to get out of a contract. But,
Yeah.
you know, I found that certain vendors I could really trust because they communicated with me, didn't ignore my emails and let me know, you know, the right process to move forward. And then some other ones, I lost a lot of trust because they came up with some non-existent fees. And then, you know, it makes me question, am I going to see more fees moving forward? And it really, in my eyes, discredited the vendor that I really was excited about. So just curious if you've seen that trend as well.
Yeah, you know, we have received reports, you know, where consumers they felt duped. You know, I gave this business my money. The pandemic has happened. Obviously, I can't carry out this transaction right now. I'm not saying that I want to cancel. You know, I'm just saying that we probably need to discuss how in the future we can go about completing this whole process. And, you know, not every business handled it as best as they could have. And, you know, I think part of that process was, or the problem was that businesses forgot that consumers were also impacted too. So someone like you who's planning your wedding, that's a big hit, you know? And so, yes, you're losing business. Yes, you're not sure what's going to happen, but think about what happens for the consumer. And so that's what you want to take into consideration. The fact that they're going to remember how you dealt with the situation. And that will determine if they recommend you in the future. That will determine if they even decide to continue when things are better. And so maintaining that trust is key. And even if it meant where, you know, you're going to have to look into changing some of the conditions, it's something that requires discussion versus throwing them under the bus and having them feeling like, you know, I thought I could have trusted this business. And then it becomes a matter of contracts, you know, what was said versus what was not said. And when you could have possibly just had a simple conversation, because at this point, people are very understanding about what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So to go through quickly, when it comes to the situation with the 8 standards for trust, we're looking at number 1 being build trust. And so you want to establish and maintain a positive track record in the marketplace. And so this will require things like communicating with your customers, your suppliers, and your staff. You want to create a plan for preventing the spread of COVID-19 at your business, and you want to communicate it with the people it will impact. And so the fact that you even have 1 loyal customer, it means you have already started the process of building trust in your community. And now, especially during this time, people are going to be looking to you as a source of truth and honesty. Another thing you want to do is advertise honestly. So stick to the standards of advertising and selling. You know, people are concerned about the financial business impact that the pandemic has had. And so if you intend to offer special pricing or add specific fees, you want to let consumers know, and you want to make sure you're advertising it properly. And so, for instance, if your business is one or in an industry where COVID-19 surcharge might be something you might be looking into or adding, you want to make sure you communicate this to the consumers and let them know what the charge will cover, and tell the truth. So, you know, that is pretty straightforward. So the next thing is be transparent. So openly identify the nature, location, and ownership of the business, and clearly disclose any policies, guarantees, and procedures that influence a customer's decision to buy. So if you or the people you work with are exhibiting signs of infection, you know, as it relates to transparency, you need to make the critical step of acknowledging that you're going to be ill or likely be ill and take actions to self-quarantine. So you want to also have plans in place to help ensure that your team knows what to do in case you have to be the one that will end up being outside of the office. And so that will help to maintain your 5-star customer service standard. But if you need to close your business, send clear communications to your customers and suppliers about your plans so they know how to operate and what to expect if, during their time of absence. On another point now, the final 4 would be honor your promises. So abide by all written agreements and verbal representations too. If there's a case where there's you don't have a plan and you're not prepared, inform the people that will be impacted despite your concerns about their response. So what you need to remember is that it's a novel situation for everyone. So no one expects perfection, but your staff, customers, suppliers, they all need to be able to trust you, and being honest helps to build that trust. You also want to be responsive. So address any marketplace issues quickly, professionally, and in good faith. And yes, we know you're going to get questions from staff and suppliers and consumers, especially in the next coming weeks, about what is going to be happening and how it will be impacting your business. And, like many other businesses and people generally speaking, you may not have all the answers, and that is understandable. So respond and let them know that you are working on a comprehensive response, and then you need to actually work towards getting the answer. And don't fall into the temptation to bury your head in the sand. You want to be mindful that even if you're not worried about COVID-19, others around you are. And if you are in a position to give them information that will ease their minds and you make them feel more comfortable, you need to be ready to do that. Safeguard privacy. So protect any data, anything that's collected from consumers and even from your staff as well. So collect personal information only as needed and respect the preferences of consumers regarding the use of their information. And on that note, I do want to add that when it comes to your staff's health and condition, that's also something that you need to keep into account. Their medical information is private and confidential. So if you are required to close your business, you want to remember that HR and privacy laws still remain in place, and you are obligated to protect the privacy of your employees. But there are exceptions where, the government health agencies might need to track and research the spread of the virus. And if, where necessary, you can reach out to the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner for our province, because they have so many useful tools that you can review to boost privacy policies in your business. And finally, embody integrity. So approach all business dealings, marketplace transactions with integrity. You want to remember that, by embodying integrity throughout the rise and eventual fall of the pandemic, you will remain a trusted leader in the marketplace and in the community. And you may not be thinking about it now, but your actions and your responses are things that customers, staff, and suppliers are going to be remembering in the long term. So as we go towards the end, you want to form a genuine connection with your customers. So you don't want to just make them see your ads or your marketing tactics. People have been restricted. So you want to, make them feel good in your process and, incorporate new aspects to your customer service. So even for the not so sexy businesses like the trades or maybe even engineering, you want to add surprise elements and flair to the moments where you do actually interact with your consumers. So if you have that bandwidth or that capacity, give the 10th caller of the day a 5% discount on their order. Just something that establishes a genuine connection. And because of the fact it also starts with positive first impressions. Now, just looking at that stat on your screen, you're going to see where 30% of consumers continue to seek services from the same vendor for 2 or more years if they had a great first experience with them. And on the flip side, 40% of consumers avoid seeking services from vendors after a bad first experience. Another thing is actively collect, share, consider your customer reviews. Happy customers are your best marketing strategy. So you want to remember that when it comes down to it, word of mouth recommendations, online reviews are what people really consider when turning to a new company. And we looked at those numbers already. So keeping in mind all of that, the key to great reviews is, of course, providing an excellent first-time buyer experience. So make sure you give service customers want to rave about, and that will bring them back. Shoppers are looking for real customer options on sites like bbb.org, Yelp, Google, Facebook, and in some cases, they'll actually go to your business website to see what others have to say. So encourage people to leave customer reviews. Where possible, offer a coupon, and that brings them back to your store, increasing the chance that they will purchase from you again. Complaints. Nobody likes them. Everybody has, mixed feelings where these things are concerned. but ruffled feathers are inevitable in any relationship, but how you deal with concerns and problems is what instills trust. So if you want someone to trust you, you have to share, address complaints, share information, gain their confidence, sorry, exude pride and passion about your business, resolve conflicts quickly, and these things will separate you from the pack. Think about brands like Amazon and Starbucks. When they get customer complaints, they actually embrace them. They want to find out what went wrong and how they can remedy the situation. A dissatisfied customer who feels their concerns have not been addressed is actually more likely to share their horrible experience with others. And this is counter to the brand management we just spoke about. So ignoring complaints erodes trust, communicates that you don't care, and it robs your brand of an opportunity to build relationships. So those are some takeaway tips. Make improvements, hear your customers, listen and engage, and identify systemic issues. And of course, when it comes to communicating, there are so many things happening right now, but at the same time, you want to put yourself in a position where people will be able to hear what you have to say. You're going to be consistency in the voice that you share through, and that you also have consistency across the mediums that you use to target your audiences. One, though, I do want to make reference to is social media. Now, when it comes to social media, it's one of the best ways to stay top of mind and also maintain trust and also communicate on a regular basis. So, especially if you're thinking about attracting future consumers, it's your best bet. Now, whether the customer wants to know about your products or services or simply leave a review, you need to reply promptly. Content and trust are created and also related. So you want to post regular updates about your company and your products so that customers stay connected. And I know that many businesses are, riding solo, or it's a case where they have a skeleton crew. And if that's the case, try for at least 3 times per week to make a post. All the posts need to be friendly, welcoming, and professional. And if you're rude or impolite or unwelcoming, it is going to hurt the trust that you're trying to establish. Now, when it comes to the sites, I always say, hey, if you have one good social media account that is, current and the content is frequently being posted, it's better than having 3 that you're, struggling to deal with. The favorites for business accounts are Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. However, many do try to have at least a Facebook account. Depending on the age or the audience that you're trying to target, you might need an Instagram account. So having online profiles that are authentic, they'll help to make your business seem more credible. Nowadays, people trust companies based on their online activities. So ensure that they're relevant, useful, and also conscious of who they're addressing. Now, with your website, we spoke a little bit about it, but I do want to make note of the fact that you need to invest in a professional and user-friendly website. 47% of visitors expect a website to load in less than 2 seconds. If it's taking too long, you're already pushing them away. So to improve sales and improve your customers' experience, you need to have a well-navigated website, which is useful, full of relevant content and clear product descriptions and ways to contact. And show off your well-known publications. If you received an award, put it there. If you're a part of the BBB, you want your logo to be there. And make sure you're advertising familiar payment methods that they feel comfortable utilizing. Now, from a cybersecurity perspective, you see the stats. 57% of consumers say they only use credible and legitimate websites, while 51% only choose trusted providers when making payments. So if you can't keep customers safe, you risk losing them. So you need to invest in ways to make sure that they're shopping in a secure environment. And finally, I want to say something on staff training. You want to ensure your team understands, adheres to, and enforces safety protocols in the store, and especially if you provide services that require you to enter someone's homes or their workspaces. And in some cases, these spaces are now merged. Practice to send notifications to customers about safety procedures ahead of time in case they need to come into the store or in case you need to enter their personal space. Now, good support is hard to find, but ensure that you have a team that understands and appropriately represents your brand. People don't primarily trust entities, they trust other people. So cultural sensitivity, being patient, understanding and dealing with concerns, fears, and paranoia, especially now. And even having people that speak multiple languages on your team are going to be key assets to have during this time. So ensure that your customer care employees are trained to warmly welcome customers, help them out in any way possible. Make sure that the customer is satisfied in the end. Ensure that they understand the value of trust and that they operate in a way that is consistent with your company's values, character, and culture. So with all of that being said, are there any other questions?
Thank you so much, Carla, and thank you everyone for staying with us. We acknowledge we're a couple minutes past 11, but Carla, that was such great information. I wanted to make sure that you were able to communicate all of that. So thank you so much. If there's any last questions, I believe that we've gotten to them all. This is kind of your last chance. We've got some thank yous coming in, so thank you everyone for joining us today. I'll quickly share my screen.
Yeah.
And Carla, will this presentation be available to those who register after? Can we send them a PDF version so they can see that?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So we'll be sure to send out this recording to everyone. And before you go, I want to let you know of some upcoming sessions with Women's Enterprise Centers. So
I'll let you, I'm going to switch over now, and then you can take it from here.
Yeah. Perfect. And I'll share my screen. There we go. So just wanted to let everyone know that we have the Build Your Business webinar series happening. The first one was yesterday, and we've got 3 more in this session. Usually we charge for these sessions, but due to COVID and everything that's going on, we're offering them for free. We cover topics like marketing, strategic planning, human resources, so really relevant to your business as you grow. So with that, I want to thank everyone so much for joining us today on the Build Back with Trust webinar. Thank you, Carla, for the fantastic presentation. I think this will be a really important addition to our resource library. And so any of you who are on the line, feel free to share this with your friends who are also business owners. And we will see you on the next webinar. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.